Alright, greetings YouTubers. My name is 40NoobNZ. You are travelling with me either because you are a noob, you're over 40, or you're interested in having a look around New Zealand and seeing what New Zealand's like as far as motorcycling goes. I've had this channel for over a year, but there's only been 2 videos posted. I started out on a wonderful little bike. It was a Hyosung GV250. It was probably still one of my favourite bikes to ride. We'll get into that at some stage as to why. Today I had a motorcycle accident. I've spent probably a year away from being able to film anything or do anything pretty much. So but I bought myself a new bike. And we're going to start heading out and going for some rides. I'm only a couple of months post surgery, so I'm having to be very careful with how much riding I do, but I'll be slowly building that up. So the plan for the whole channel, of course, is just to be able to get out there and to be able to show you guys exactly what New Zealand looks like and exactly what we have here in New Zealand, because I know there's a lot of people wanting to get into New Zealand, given the fact that we're COVID free and all that kind of thing. There's a lot of people wanting to come to New Zealand. I thought it'd be a really good opportunity for me to be able to share with you exactly what New Zealand looks like. I'm sure that you can probably see around me here, I'm sitting next to the Waikato River. I come from Taranaki originally. I lived in the South Island in Christchurch for 21 years, and now I am living in the Waikato. And since my accident, now it was a texting driver who just turned in front of me and I had nowhere left to go. If you look at Dan the fireman, he'll tell you about what positions to be on the road. I was in the 2nd position, so that's in the middle of my lane, when potentially, because he was turning in front of me, I should have been in position 1, not in position 2 or position 3. You're not going to be able to see that. Position 1, 2 or 3. So he came in and he turned in front of me. I was in position 2. I was about 10 meters away from him when he decided to turn, and I had nowhere to go. So have a look at his channel, because he's really good with instructing newbies on how to actually do various aspects of their riding experience. I've now put around about 10,000 kilometers on the clock between 2 different bikes, and today we are going to put a 50 or 100 k's more. I have to build this up a little bit, so I can't be on the bike for too long. So what bike did I get? So I went from a Hyosung GV250. It was a 2005. It was a carbureted version of the bike. I do love those bikes though, and if I was just going to have a round town commuter or something I was going to go on a 10 or a 15 minute or even up to an hour's ride on within the local area, I'd probably have chosen that one over anything else. Simply because it's really economic to run. It's got a big petrol tank, and it's oil air cooled. The new ones are all fuel injected, and you just don't get that from a 250cc in many places. So today what we're going to be discussing is just kind of the future of the channel. I'm going to be having a chat to you about my new bike, the reasons why I chose the bike, and some of the problems that I encounter as somebody who's only been riding for a year, and realistically I haven't even been riding that long, because I've had months off. I had about 3 months off when I first did the injury, and then I've had about 3 months off of riding since I've had my surgery. So there's probably been a good 6 months in the last 15 months that I haven't been riding. So I'm still fairly fresh at this, and I just wanted to go through a few things with you, maybe some different options as far as motorcycles go, what I liked about this bike, what I didn't like about this bike, and bikes like it. I got to ride quite a few bikes between surgeries, so we'll go over those as well. things that you can expect, and we'll go over some different budget ranges and things like that. But a lot of what you guys are going to be seeing from me will be travel. So I'll be heading out to Raglan. I'll be doing Port Waikato down to New Plymouth probably at some stage in the near future. I'll be going over to the east coast and actually doing a lot of travel through the east coast and the Coromandel, Bay of Islands, that kind of thing. So you'll get to see some really cool scenery, and I'm hoping around about Christmas time to be heading down to the South Island and doing a trip around the South Island on this bike as well. So let's have a look at the bike. Oh, it's a little bit hard for me to get on and off at the moment with my knee, but anyway, I had ACL surgery. So this is it. This is my Suzuki V-Strom 650cc LAMS bike. So it's a DL650A. I have put crash bars on it. I put these on it. I've actually come off the bike a couple of times just at low speed drops, and they've actually worked really well. I've put heated grips on it. It did have a set, but they kind of died relatively quickly. There are Givi racks on here which I've put on as well. As you can see, I have done some low speed drops on the bike, but these racks really do save the bike from having any damage. All this stuff here was done before I got the bike, so it has been used as an adventure bike. It hasn't just been driven around on the road. So Scorpion exhaust, that again was on there before I got it. The top the box here is actually a Pan-European from Honda, which works well. It's been sort of jury-rigged to fit on there. So that's where it is at the moment. I'm finding it very hard to try and find a bash plate for the bike because of the age of it. This is a 2005, and I didn't want to get anything that was going to be too pristine because I knew I was going to be laying it down from time to time. At the moment, I'm running Shinko 705s on the front and on the rear. I just put the Shinko 705 on the rear, and compared to the 14-year-old Anarchy 3 that was on it before, the handling on this is much improved. I think that tyre was so dried out that it just wasn't working very well anymore. So that's pretty much it as far as the mods go. I also put this, I call it a dad screen on the top here. The reason I put that on there was because I found I'm 6 foot, and I just found that the bike was, I was just getting a bit of buffeting on the helmet, so I just wanted to get something where I wasn't going to get the buffeting like I was, and that seems to have eliminated about 90% of it. Just depends on what kind of wind we've got coming. I just leave it where it is now, which is pretty much at the minimum setting. I bought it off AliExpress for about $5, so, and that included shipping, believe it or not. So it's been a good screen. So as you can see, it's got a fairly rudimentary old school dash on it because it is a 2005. It's not a new bike, but it's perfectly functional the way that it is. It tells me how much fuel I've got. That's pretty reliable as well at the moment. You can see I've done 75,573, and it is running really well. So the history of me getting this bike, basically a few months ago before I had my surgery, I bought this bike from a place in Auckland called Cycle Spot. Now that was a great thing to do. Now I got it off of the New Zealand version of Craigslist, which is a pretty awesome wee site, and I got it from a dealership, so a bit of a score because I got a warranty with this bike even though it's 15 years old. So I got I think it was a 6-month warranty with it, so it's past the warranty date now. Just checking to see that we're still recording, because I did do another one of these and it just didn't come out. So hang on a second, I'm just going to pop my helmet lid down so that I can talk to you guys a little bit more. So the reason that I got this rather than another 250, I was doing a lot of long distance rides, and those long distance rides were to Taranaki, which is around about 3 hours and 20 minutes away, over to the Coromandel, which was around about the same length of time to get there. And the 250cc, though it did its job and it got me there, I just found that the passing lanes are very, very short, and I was lacking a little bit of power to get past cars, and at some stages it was getting quite dangerous. People here won't drop back if you can't accelerate, and a lot of car drivers feel that you are faster than them, even though, because they don't know what cc your engine is. They don't realise that it's only a little tiny bike, and struggling to get past them. So they'll sit there at 95k an hour and slow down at 80 and think that you're just going to be able to buzz past them. So I elected in the end to go and get one of these. After test riding a few bikes, I got this for a couple of different reasons. So actually my favourite bike to test ride was the Honda CB500X. I felt that that was so well put together that it was actually boring, and I kind of liked that predictability, especially after having the motorcycle accident. I really wanted something which was going to make me feel safe and just be ultra predictable on the road. This bike's not quite so much that way, but what it was it was 1/3 the price. 1/3 the price makes a big difference to my decision making process. I've had the bike for a few months now. I've been able to do some Ks on it. I can honestly say that I actually like the bike now more than I did, and I can say that it's definitely a bike that's grown on me. It's such a lovely predictable machine to ride. Now that I've gotten used to it, and now that I've put that new back tyre on, because the thing that's been plaguing me this whole time with regards to this bike has been the fact that that back end just always seems so fidgety, and as a learner rider that's really something that I didn't want. And I thought that that was the bike, and as it turns out it wasn't. It was the tyres. I thought that everyone knew that to be able to ride a bike, you really want to have tyres that are 5 years old at most. And it turns out that the motorcycle shop didn't really care about that. They sorted everything else out that was a problem with this bike. No problems at all, don't get me wrong, but I guess putting $400 worth of tyres on the bike was a little bit more than they could do given the situation. But with me being it says not to turn this way, but I'm going to turn this way anyway. With me being a learner rider, I needed somebody to be able to just sort of check things over and make me aware of what was going on. That was something that they failed to do. So if you are going to go out and purchase a motorcycle, take somebody with you that might know a little bit more about it. I've only moved up here recently, and I don't really know anybody, or didn't know anybody at the time that I bought this, that could help me with that decision-making process and making sure that I actually had a nice, reliable bike. So take somebody with you. I was fortunate that it was under warranty, and some of the things that did go wrong were fixed before I needed to worry about them. So what do I like about the bike? Well, it has a scary amount of power for a beginner, and that's a plus and a minus. I'm an adventure junkie. I do like riding bikes. I do like jumping out of aeroplanes. I do like whitewater rafting. I do like all of those sorts of things which potentially somebody else might find a little bit risky. But this bike was, in my opinion, for a beginner, scary quick. And it came on very, 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 very suddenly. And it's wet here and I'm not used to the bike gripping, so I'm just going very, very slowly around this roundabout. So the other thing that I really liked about this bike was the ability to be able to have storage. I normally have some pannier racks on this as well, some panniers on here as well, but they're being repaired at this current point in time. I normally just have soft bags. I don't carry anything too sophisticated because I like to have something that's collapsible. The bags are big enough to be able to store my helmet and my jacket in. I intend to do a bit of motor camping and do a few things like that, so I wanted to have something that had plenty of storage but also wasn't going to get damaged if I fell off the bike. Anything more than maybe, you know, a couple of ripped straps or something that hold it on. So I managed to achieve that, which is really cool. So, and I got those off AliExpress as well for about 40 or 50 bucks. So the reason that I decided this was going to be the bike for me was price and reliability. I know that Suzuki's an extremely reliable brand. Interestingly enough, I was watching, I think he calls himself F9 the other day, and he did a series of new motorcycle oil tests to be able to find out which bike has been created in the most contaminant-free areas, and Suzuki was right at the bottom of the Japanese list. Chinese and Italian bikes came above that, but for insofar as what I'm doing here, I'm really not finding that I'm having any issues. I mean, the bike's done 75,000 Ks. I'm sure if it was going to have issues, it would have had issues. It had a new cam chain tensioners and bearings all put into the bike when I got it, so it was virtually a brand new bike when I got it. I'm finding I'm getting around about 500 Ks to a tank. I don't know what that works out to be, probably something like 300 miles to a tank, but I drive it like an old nana. Even though it's saying 100 now, I'm not actually doing 100. It's about 10 k an hour out on the speedo. So, and I tend to just drive it like a nana would drive, and just enjoy the ride rather than really sort of maxing it out in any way, shape or form. I like the fact that I could go off-road with this bike. It was it's only a 75/25, but it does mean that if I want to hit a gravel track, if I want to have a bit of a go at a dry dirt track, then I can sort of get on and get that done as well. So I enjoyed that aspect of the bike as well. Probably one of the other big things to this bike is the fact that I could grow into it. So with the Suzuki, I knew that even the Lambs version, 47 horsepower, it'll do 3.8 seconds to 100, and it goes on to a top speed of about 185 kilometers an hour. So when you look at it like that, it's a pretty quick piece of kit. It's certainly a lot faster than any car I've ever owned, and I kind of look a bit sideways at somebody who says that 47 horsepower is not enough. for having 2 people up or whatever. Not that I'm still on my restricted license, but I've really packed this bike down with gear, and I've not really noticed any difference whatsoever to the weight, and that's clothes, jackets, fishing gear, all of these sorts of things. You know, I've probably put another 30 kilos on the bike when I've gone away for various periods of time, and I've really not had any issues whatsoever. Just checking to see, yep, still recording. And so when you're sitting there and you're looking at these bikes and people are saying to you, oh, you know, you're not going to have enough power, even as an experienced rider, I'd suggest to you that if you need to go any faster than 0 to 100 in 4 seconds, and if you need to be going any faster than 180 kilometers an hour, you're probably sitting on the Autobahn. You're not here in New Zealand, you're not in the United States, you're not in Europe. That's a perfectly fine amount of speed for anybody, I think. And the speed delivery is really good. I don't have to drop the speed at all. Sorry, I don't have to drop a gear at all to be able to get up most hills. I'm just going up a hill there. You can't really see it, but it was a relatively large hill. In 6th gear, having no issues whatsoever. Now 110 is 100 kilometers an hour on this bike, and it's closer to 5,000 RPM than 4,000 RPM. At 100 kilometers an hour, in fact it's close to 6. So if I go to 110 on the speedo, which is 100 kilometers an hour, you're looking at about 5,600 RPM. So you're about, well, halfway to a red line, I suppose, just over halfway to the red line. I'm not telling you how fast I have had the bike before, but believe me, it's more than adequate. And we are, this is Wada Wada. So we're just having a wee buzz through this area. So would I suggest this bike for an absolute learner, somebody who's never jumped on a motorcycle before? Actually, no. What would I suggest? Why would I not suggest this for a learner rider? I wouldn't suggest this for a learner rider because it's a big heavy bike. With all of the gear and everything on it, it's around 230 kilos. Trying to maneuver this bike is a little bit more of a mission than the likes of say my Hyosung Aquila GV250, which was 186 kilos with a full tank of gas. This bike is considerably heavier than that. And so with an extra sort of 40-50 kilos of weight, that does make a lot of difference for either a learner rider or a female rider potentially trying to lift the bike, or even a young teenager trying to lift the bike. I would suggest looking at the 250 version if you're sold on getting a V-Strom, but to be perfectly honest with you, for a learner rider, I still think, like, our old rules used to be a 250cc motorcycle on a learner and restricted license. That was your maximum size, and going up to a full power bike after that. Now they have all of these different power to weight ratios and all that kind of thing, and I honestly think it's a bit of a have. I think the 250cc's not a bad option. Just taking my time on this one a little bit because it's wet and paint and stuff, and so the thing that I would suggest to you is that if you are going to look to purchase a bike, probably something around the 400cc mark, if you've never ridden before, would be absolutely fine. I wouldn't go for a 600. Be careful who you get your information from. If a guy's been riding or a girl's been riding for 20 years and they turn around to you and say, oh no, you'll be fine on a 650, the reason they're saying that is because they haven't been there in 20 years. You also get a lot of people out there who ride 150 kilometers a week or less, maybe a month, who are trying to offer you advice as to what size bike you should get. Well, I can tell you now that I do a minimum once I'm on my, once I'm back up and running again, of about 250 to 300 k's a week on my bike. Not every week, but most weeks I go out for a ride. I at least come out to Raglan. It's about 160 k's to Raglan, so I'm doing, regular road miles, and I ride during the week as well. So I'll ride to the shops rather than getting in the car and going down to the shops. I would rather be on a bike than be anywhere else. And I'm telling you now that this bike is probably too powerful for you when you're first starting out. The other thing that I would consider, particularly if you are 5'11" or under, even at 6 foot really, is to look at getting a bike that's not very tall, so a cruiser bike or something. For your first year of riding, you might want to get out there and get on dirt roads and all that kind of thing, and that's great, but trying to learn how to maneuver a big, high, heavy bike. I've owned this bike for 4 or 5 months now, and I'm just starting to get used to how to maneuver the bike now, and that's a good long learning process, and you don't want to be worrying about that when you're learning. You just want to get on the bike and go. I know certainly that's what I wanted to do. I certainly didn't want to be mucking around with learning how to prop the bike up and pick it up and how to maneuver it when you're in tight quarters and all that kind of thing. I didn't want to learn that to start with because I had so many other things that I had to try and go through. Incidentally, I apologise if the screen's not that clear. We are going through fairly good rain here. So what bike would I suggest for a learner rider? Well, the Himalayan G6, if you can afford the brand new one. They're about 7,500 New Zealand dollars brand new at this current point in time. We're 2021, I think it's 7,650 or something like that, and about 8,000 or 9,000 with hard luggage on it. So they're pretty good. I think that the reliability on them seems to be pretty good. I've taken one for a quick ride around the place, and I actually found it to be a pretty cool sort of a bike. The only thing that I didn't like about it was it takes a little bit longer, like my 250, because they're relatively the same power. My Hyosung GV250 was 27 horsepower. The Himalayan is 25, I think 25.6 horsepower or something along those lines. But the Himalayan does have a bit more torque, so 23 or 24 newton meters of torque, I believe. So getting up around those sorts of figures means that it will accelerate a little bit faster than what your 250 will, but you're only going to be capable of about the same top speed. So when you're heading up around the top of the tippity top of your top speed and trying to pass somebody, it can be a little bit tricky. So I do like the Himalayan though. If you're wanting to do a little bit of on-road, off-road, the seat height's a little bit lower than this, so if you're about 5'8", 5'9", you'll still be able to flat foot the bike okay. Excuse my clearing my throat. It's not COVID, I promise. If you if you're wanting to do a little bit of adventure bike riding, that would be probably at this stage the only bike that I would suggest as a straight off beginner's bike in the adventure bike circuit. I know there's Benellis, there's Kawasaki Versys, there's all those kinds of bikes out there, but to be perfectly honest, I found the height of these bikes quite intimidating when I first got them, and I think the weight, because they're very top heavy, trying to lift them and maneuver them when you're still learning is quite hard. And in fact, I dropped this once in the driveway, just to give you an idea of exactly how hard that was to do. So probably the next ones would be your cruiser bikes or your sport bikes. You know, Ninja 300 or a Ninja 400 or something along those lines would be absolutely fine, I think. But it depends on what kind of riding you're wanting to do. If you're just wanting to do quick blats around the place, if you're coming out here, for instance, to Raglan, I think you need to be looking pretty carefully at exactly what kind of bike that you want, because I'll tell you something, before I got used to counter steering, and I knew something about this because I'd been a road cyclist before, doing counter steering around corners and all that kind of thing, until you're fluent with it, getting up around some of these corners is pretty tricky. So you don't want to be on a bike, I don't feel, that you have to lean hard into the corners. You want something with a relatively neutral riding experience. You want to have something which is pretty well straight up and down without too many other issues. So that's what I would suggest for your first bike. Probably something along the lines more of a cruiser bike or a sport tourer. Man, that rain's really coming in because I'm now having to close up my vents because I'm getting a wet head. So that's probably what I would look at most with regards to a motorcycle. Would be a cruiser or a sport tourer, and then graduate into something more along the adventure lines, unless you're willing to go with a Himalayan or Himalayan to start with. Some of the other things that I found to be pretty necessary is take the bike out for a ride. Obviously you can't ride a bike without your learner license here in New Zealand, so if you are looking at that side of things, your best bet is get out there, get the learner license. They'll give you a GN125. That's what I got put on to do my learner license, and that's actually a really valuable course because it actually teaches you how to handle the bike. And that was a really cool, you know, sort of hour and a half. I think it was an hour and a half long session actually that I got. I'm not saying that everyone gets that, but hour and a half long session, and I really enjoyed that. That was really cool. It wasn't nerve-wracking at all. The guy was actually, because he gets you to do a couple of test runs first. Once you've got an idea of how you're supposed to handle the bike, gives you a couple of test runs, and then he gives you the full 9 yards test, but he doesn't actually tell you that he's doing it. So you're actually sitting the test without knowing that you're sitting the test, which is quite good because you don't, you know, the nerves aren't there. So that was good. And a Ride Forever course, which I have yet to book because I got hit by a car before I got a chance to go on one. So I'm looking at doing a Ride Forever course. It's like an MSF course in the United States. I'd probably look to do that on those bikes, spend about a year on those bikes, and then look to get something like this, because to be honest with you, I still find this a bit of a handful, and I've been riding it for several months now. You can see that I'm not competing with the cars to be able to speed around these corners. It is wet. I have road bias tyres, but not full road tyres. The 705s are 25% off-road tyre. So just nervous about leaning it in the wet a little bit. After it's been raining for a wee while, generally I'm finding that the roads are pretty good, but there's always that, especially on roads that aren't travelled, you know, in high density, there's always that risk that there's a bit of oil or whatever on the road. And also some of the roads around here in New Zealand, I don't know, I can't speak for other countries, I haven't been motorcycling in other countries yet, that will happen, but you know, here in New Zealand the roads can be really good like this, and then they can just go to a corner where they're super slick and really worn out, and that's something you've really got to watch on the bike. And I'm always hunting for the line with the most gravel in the tar seal. Today I'm also testing some gear. I bought a whole bunch of gear from 1 Ton. They're a Taranaki motorcycle apparel shop, and what they do is they design and manufacture their gear themselves. I actually have a helmet from them which I'm not using today, simply because all of my recording gear was in this helmet, so I'll be testing that one out as well. It feels to me like I'm getting a little bit of water in my boots, and I was told that they were supposed to be 100% waterproof, so not so happy with that, but I'll put some waterproofing spray on them and hopefully that will sort them out. So I'd actually recommend 1 Ton to anybody in New Zealand. Like for $450 you get yourself fully kitted out. My jacket's 100% waterproof. I'm not feeling any water coming through. I'm not feeling any water coming through in my pants, although I should probably do up my knees because I've got the vents open. So I'm not feeling any water coming in anywhere. They do all of their protection gear for your shoulders, elbows, knees, and hips. They're all CE protection, so they're all, you know, relatively good quality protective gear. And they have 1000 denier where it needs it, around your bendy parts, so your knees and your elbows and your shoulders, and your hips, and then it's 600 weight denier around the rest of it. Just trying to do up that knee. Oh, hard. Didn't quite get there with it. So, and they're doing it at a reasonable price. You can pick up a helmet for around 150 bucks, and it's got flip down, or they call it a dual visor, so it's got a flip down sun visor in it, and it's got plenty of vents and things in it. The new ones that they're getting in the not too distant future are going to have pin locks in them. The one that I've got doesn't have pin locks, but they've told me that it will fit the new pin lock visor when it comes in, so looking forward to giving that a go. So what's my next bike? Well, you know, I think my next bike is actually going to be a Benelli 502X. Italian design. For those of you that are just sort of learning about bikes, this is an Italian design bike. Benelli's been around for well over 100 years. I think it's 112 years or something phenomenal like that. They're bought out by a $500 million a year Chinese company, which also owns Volvo and what's the other one there? Is Volvo and I think it's Lotus. So they own both of those two companies. You know, both of those companies, they're rated for safety, they're rated for speed, suspension and handling is a big one as well. I'm going to take one for a test ride at some stage, which I'll take you guys on as part of my research. But at this stage, everything on paper seems good. Every review I've seen is good. Here in New Zealand, you have different tiers for your registration. So what I'm looking for is something which is going to be cheaper to register than this bike. This bike's about $500 or $570 a year to register, which is, you know, a small fortune. But the Benelli, being a 500cc or under 500cc, goes down to $276 a year for registration. It has switchable ABS. This has no ABS because it's old. And it comes with your engine guards, it comes with pannier racks, it comes with, you know, your ABS, fuel injection, all those sorts of bits and pieces. And really the only equivalent to that would probably be going to either the Kawasaki Versys, the Honda CB500X, or one of these new V-Stroms. Now the new V-Strom on the, because I've been looking at them, the new V-Strom is, you know, pretty phenomenal in price. To be able to go and get the off-road version, which is the X version, is 15,000 New Zealand, and that's for the LAMS approved or just the standard 650 full power 67 horsepower. But what I'm finding is that, I mean, a lot of people are like, they're worried, oh well, you know, it's only 47 horsepower from the Benelli and it weighs, you know, 1/4 of a ton. Well, yep, but so does this, and this is 47 horsepower, and I'm finding that this is absolutely perfect. I'm finding that it's got enough power to put the bejesus up you if that's what you need, and it's got the power to be able to haul along, you know, a bunch of stuff on the back of the bike. Chances of me actually doubling somebody on a touring ride is going to be pretty slim, and certainly if you're learning, you're not going to be doing that because it's illegal, and if you are, I don't want to know. So the Benelli has the same amount of horsepower as this, roughly the same weight, so I know that that's going to suit my style of riding. Generally speaking, if I'm going to be doing off-road, I'll be doing dirt roads. I won't be going pure off-road. And if I do go pure off-road, I need to be on a different bike, to be honest with you. I mean, I tried hauling this up a dirt road a wee while back. It was a farm track, and it had been raining a couple of days beforehand. It was boggy as, and without knobbies on this and the weight mixed with the amount of horsepower that this has got, it was constantly stalling trying to get up the hills. It's designed for gravel, guys, you know what I mean, gravel and light roads, light dirt roads in relatively good condition. It's something that a road bike won't be able to do, but something that a dirt bike would probably find too easy. That's kind of where this sits. And the Benelli is going to be in exactly the same position. You know, these are big, heavy touring bikes. They're not going to be a full-on dirt bike, and if you want that, then you probably want to go to, you know, like a dual purpose, and go to more of a dual sport bike, and then you've got a little bit of a compromise on fuel. Probably the same amount of power. You know, you can get 650s, 750s, all of that kind of thing for the off-road experience. And these will do what they do if you put the right tyres on them, etc. But I honestly, I feel like this is a road bias bike after taking it off-road. Bearing in mind, I did used to, when I was younger, go for you know, a lot of dirt riding with mates, etc. So I do know what it's like to be off-road properly, and I don't feel that this bike is sort of capable of that to the same degree. But I have taken it down, you know, dirt roads and shingle roads, and that kind of thing, and it handles it just fine. Even with the Anarchy 3 on it, it handled those just fine. Now that I have the tyre I've got on the back now, which is the Shinko 705, and it's a newer tyre, it's a lot grippier on the road, and I didn't have to pay a huge amount of money for it. A lot of people have called the wet experience. This is only like the second time I've ever ridden this tyre in the rain, and it's a relatively new tyre. I've only done probably 300 k's on it, and you know, it's actually pretty good. I'm not finding that I'm having any issues with it whatsoever. So that's another thing, is obviously, you know, if you go to a more expensive tyre, you're going to get a more expensive result. But for what I'm doing, I'm finding, you know, maximum 100k an hour, 110k an hour on New Zealand roads. I'm finding that this tyre is going really well. Just be aware of the fact that they do a cross ply and a radial. If you're riding something this big and heavy, you need to have the radial, not the cross ply. If you get the cross ply one, put it on here, you're going to have bubbling and you're going to have all sorts of other issues. But if you get the radial version, which is about another $30 or $40 in price, I'm having no issues with it. It's good. Well, at least so far, but I'll keep you posted. So all in all, what I would do as a learner rider is go for a cruiser bike, or I would go for a street tourer, in regards to, you know, like your Kawasaki Ninjas or a GSX, a Suzuki GSX, something along those lines. But I try and keep myself below the 400cc range. If I was a mature rider, somebody that's been doing it for a few decades, I would more than happily have this as a touring bike, and I know that you're going to be happy on it. I know it's going to have the power that you require on it. So what are we going to be doing on this bike in the not too distant future? Well, once my knee's a bit better, because to be honest with you now, I'm actually reaching my limit as far as how far I can ride. And I'm looking at potentially turning around and heading back home again. But once I can ride again long distances, we're actually going to do a big dirt road from Port Waikato. It's a mix of dirt and seal, from Port Waikato through to the Awakino Gorge, and we may head on down to Taranaki from that point. I've gone out and spent a bit of money while I've been off work, and I now have a drone so I can do some aerial shots, although it's not a great quality drone, but it'll give you the gist. And if a lot of you people click and subscribe to my channel, I promise that I'll upgrade my drone as soon as I've got enough money coming from the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is really just so that I can afford to do more of this, just to do more riding and enjoy more of New Zealand, and I want you guys to come along and enjoy more of New Zealand with me. I have to work full time obviously, so it'll be fit in and around that. I'm hoping to be able to come out once a week and go for at least a short ride with you, and then do some really nice big long rides. So some of the things that I've encountered as a learner since I've started riding, and I'm giving you a bit of an update because I haven't done anything for a wee while. People don't see you guys. Watch Dan Dan Fireman, and he will illustrate to you the positions on the road that you want to be in. So for this particular part of the road, I'm going centrally because you can see that on either side of where a car tyre is, a car sits is the car tyre track, and you can see that it's more worn. So I try and sit dead centre, especially when it's raining. When I come to T intersections, I'll tend to be more to for me it's the left. If you're in the States, you know, or likewise road situated country, it would be to the right, but I tend to sit more to the left. If there are a lot of driveways and a lot of straight roads, then I'll sit more towards the right, in this position here. when I'm coming into the corners, I try and straight line it for as long as possible, and then I turn into the corner. I don't try and take the same track that I would take from a car, simply because of the fact that when you're leaning a bike, you have your tyres can be, you know, on the right side of the road, but as you lean the bike, your body, your head, is on the wrong side of the road. Now, I got taught this by a guy who used to race motorcycles, and he's done his certs for riding instruction. And I tell you something now, guys, that it is paramount that you start learning your riding lines as early as you possibly can. Learn that when you have somebody turning off, they probably haven't seen you in their rear view mirror, so move out to one side in case they do something silly, like, you know, decide to keep going straight ahead. Hang back a little bit off the back of other vehicles, because people do some really silly and unpredictable things, and you'll notice it in a car, but you'll be very, very consciously aware of it on a motorcycle. This is Raglan, guys, and I've actually already ridden further than I should have, according to doctor's recommendation, so I need to do an about face and head back home again. I just wanted to get this in because the footage that I got was not good. Now, the reason that just happened on that intersection is because when I took this bike off-road, I got the clutch to a point where it didn't want to work anymore. It got very, very hot, and since then I've got clutch, but only about 3/4 of the way out on the grab. The other thing I'd suggest, if you're going to buy a bike like this, if it doesn't have it already, go and buy yourself a couple of shorty clutch and brake levers, because these are a long way out. Like, I have to use 3 fingers in order to use these. They're miles out. I don't know if you can see that, but they are miles out. So I would suggest to you go and get a couple of shorties and adjust your bike to there. I'm going to have to go and put some new plates on the clutch and this thing in the not too distant future, and I've got some shorties coming as well from, guess where? AliExpress. The reason that I'm doing AliExpress so much is because I've bought so many things from there, and they've actually all been really good quality. I've never had an issue. Even on my last bike, I was buying stuff from AliExpress and never had one single issue with anything that I've had from over there. So, and the longevity seems to be working out really well as well, and the quality of the product seems to be over the years getting better and better and better and better. So you can see as I'm leaning here how close the top of my bike is getting to the corner. So when you're actually out there on the road and you're doing the things that you need to be doing, just make sure that you take a wider line on your corners, so you would come over to the edge of the road here, straight line it for as long as you possibly can, and then flick the bike in, because otherwise you're going to end up well over the centre line. Like right now, the middle of my bike is in the middle of the road, so my tyres are in the middle of the road, but the front of my bike was almost at the white line. So, you know, these are a big bike too, so, you know, you're even further pitched over towards the middle of the road when you're doing things. So that's one of the tips that I can give you guys, and just ride your own ride too, guys. Like, don't be afraid to go a bit slower around the corners, and if people have to pass you, then they have to pass you. If you've got traffic that you're slowing down, then pull over to the side of the road and just let them pass, and just be safe out there, guys, really. I mean, always got to be careful of that corner. I've had a few people just about take me out on that corner. Just blind intersection, which is why you see me right over to the edge of the road at the moment. So I've got a car behind me now. I can see a spot here that I can potentially pull over. Just bear in mind that there is a white line here, so in the wet it's going to be slippery. There's nobody else behind him, so I can carry on. I'm not willing to risk my life to be able to allow him to go faster, so just pull over, let him through, give plenty of notice. You know, I say in the wet, double your notice. So here in New Zealand, the minimum legal required indication period is 3 seconds. I'm giving 6 in the rain, and I'm giving at least, let's say, old Brocky used to say, only a fool will break the 2-second rule, and in the wet on a bike, hey, triple that, make it 6 seconds in the wet. Just, there's no reason why you need to be right up the backside of another vehicle. Just back off. This rain is really coming down and I'm still dry as a bone. I'm actually really happy. So, into the hot water cylinder for the pants, and dry the jacket out in the garage when I get home. And my boots will probably need a little bit of, they're not leaking badly, but I've just had a few, I can feel it's a bit damp and around where my ankles are. So I'll go and waterproof these again, and then we should be good. So you see, I just take a little bit of a wider line there, so that I can come back in. This is another real tricky intersection here. So I take a little bit of a wider line so that I can come back in again and not be over the centre line with my helmet, my head and helmet. So hopefully you can see something today. I did do this a little while back, and the camera ended up pointed directly at my dash, so you were steering it like that the whole way. So I've made some alterations, and I'm hopefully getting a bit more of a view. Not that there's much to look at today with this rain about, but we are heading into autumn now, so you know, it is what it is. So that was Raglan, by the way. We're going to do another trip on a finer day, Raglan. Just stay off that white line in the wet, guys. So I'm going to do a bit of a dry trip out there at some stage as well. But when it's fine, we're going to do a nice dirt road ride as well. So feel free to drop into the comment section anything that you guys would like to see of New Zealand as well, and I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. The great thing about New Zealand is you can travel length and breadth in about 2 days. So the South Island is coming. I will be doing a South Island trip in the near future, but in the meantime I'm going to stay relatively local, especially with my knee the way that it is, and I'll get a story out to you. I'll get a ride out to you as much as I possibly can. So and we'll go from there. This is really good, guys. Like, this wet weather gear has been so good. I'm used to having to put pants and waterproof pants and waterproof liners and waterproof this and that and the other thing over the top of my normal gear. It's really nice to have normal gear which is just naturally waterproof. So good. Because of where I've got the GoPro at the moment, I'm getting the odd drip coming in and hitting me in the eye inside my helmet, but apart from that were toasty. So hopefully you can see some of the trees and the hills and things around the place.